Well, Eric and Lucas, thank you. Right now, we're going to bring in Oklahoma Republican Senator Markwayne Mullin, who serves on the Senate Armed Services Committee. He's live in Holdenville, Oklahoma, where a tornado reportedly killed at least 2 people yesterday. And, Senator, we'll get to that destruction a little bit later. But I first want to ask you, have you been briefed yet or received any details about the call between President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu?
Well, Arthur, we got a readout on it about probably 30 minutes ago. And it was at a pretty high level readout. It wasn't really classified, but it was considered sensitive. And this is just what I'll say, Arthur, about this. We shouldn't be pressuring Israel to do anything except take care of their own backyard. I remind people all the time that no one told us how to handle our affairs after 9/11, and this is October 7th was Israel's 9/11, and Hamas is still on their back door, and we were going to eradicate the terrorists that came after us, which is exactly why we went to war for 20 years on a war on terror. Israel has the right to defend themselves, and for the United States to put any pressure on them except full support is absolutely wrong.
Now, what do you think of the new ceasefire deal proposed by Egypt? The idea is to free the Israeli hostages and stave off Israel's planned offensive attack on Rafah.
Well, here's my deal on this one. Is if Israel wants to do it, that's fine. They should do that. I think the longer we go, the less likely we're going to have actual survivors of these hostages. At the same time, we have to make sure that that ceasefire means that Hamas isn't having the opportunity to restock and regroup, which is exactly what they do every time the fighting stops, which is why the IDF has to go back in and get aggressive. IDF has a great intelligence department. They know what Hamas is doing. They also know where they're at. They also know that they're hiding within the civilians and the civilian population that's at Rafah. And so there's a balance that has to take place there. The ceasefire only happens if Hamas wants to obey by it. And this is what I would say, too. If Israel laid down their arms today, Hamas wouldn't quit fighting. But if Hamas were to lay down their arms, Israel would also quit fighting, and it would stick. So it's a two-way street. No one believes that Hamas will ever quit fighting against Israel unless they are eradicated. And this is why a ceasefire is something that the only person that should agree to that would be Israel. We shouldn't put pressure on them unless Hamas is going to agree to it too, and there's going to be people watching them to make sure that they comply with it.
And as you well know, Hamas released those proof-of-life videos from a couple of hostages last week, which is good for their families on a level. I'm sure it's bittersweet as well. But Hamas isn't being charitable. They're putting more pressure on IDF and Israel. I mean, how do you see it?
Well, Hamas is a terrorist organization. I mean, it's kind of like these protesters that are across our campuses that are chanting, "We are Hamas." It means you're part of a terrorist organization, so you cannot trust terrorists, period. And the proof of life, great. Wonderful that they were able to do that. Clarifying that was actual on time, which we were able to clarify that was actual proof of life, that it wasn't filmed earlier, which was great. But we only saw a couple, which the last count, we had way more than that they were still holding. So what about the larger group of hostages that they're holding? And we've had horrible information of what is being done to these hostages and what's taking place. And I do believe the only way we're going to get them all back, regardless if it's recovery or if we're able to bring them back alive, will be if Hamas is eradicated completely.
All right. Senator, I want to switch gears now because you're in Holdenville, Oklahoma. And, we all hate to see the devastation in Oklahoma. It's always worse, of course, in person. Tell us what you're seeing on the ground there.
Well, I'm actually in the mobile command center of Muscogee Creek Nation here in Holdenville. It's unfortunate. This is where we had 2 deaths. Right before I came on air with you, I found out that a very long-time employee of mine that has been working for the official office for 12 years, the infant that was killed was his niece. That's what happens in rural America. Is we're all interconnected, but at the same time, it's when you see the best of all of us. And what I mean by that is we call it the Oklahoma Standard. On my drive in here, I was having to take back roads because most of the main roads were still blocked off. There was cattle pens that were destroyed, fences that were down. Well, this is calving season in Oklahoma, and there was trailers lined up, farmers out on the horses gathering up the cattle to keep them off the road that had portable pens out here. We saw church groups, of course, FEMA and OEM, Oklahoma Emergency Management, out there setting up command centers trying to help people. It's humbling. I wish I could say that this is something we're not used to, but it is in Oklahoma. But we're seeing the best of people, and all of us are working together trying to restore some type of normalcy the best we can. But it's extremely devastating.
Yeah. Yes, and the country is pulling for you. I'm glad to hear you tell us that FEMA is on the ground. Are you in touch with insurance companies to make sure the folks in Oklahoma receive payments immediately?
Well, we haven't spoke to any of them yet. They're really good about being on the ground, though, doing assessments and acting pretty quick. What role I play in this is just helping coordinate the official federal side, which is FEMA, and the Oklahoma Emergency Management. So I've been on the phone multiple times a day with the governor. Oklahoma Emergency Management is who's out here right now. Region 6, which is the FEMA, and trying to get the first dollars flowing much faster, which those are the immediate needs. That's the water, food, shelter that we have to have. And then we'll work with the insurance companies. Typically what happens in the case like this when it's widespread is we'll have 2 or 3 centers for the insurance companies to actually set up at, where people can come in and file their claims. At the same time, we're going out to them too and getting the access, because right now the insurance companies, a lot of these properties, they can't even gain access to because it's just not safe for them to get there. But we very seldom do we have an issue with insurance companies not working pretty quick in these cases.
Well, that's good to hear, and I'm glad you're there on the ground as you're helping the people there to somehow recover for those who lost their homes and their livelihoods. I mean, it's definitely devastating, and I'm sorry to hear about the death that got so close to you as well. So, Senator, if you have any final words for me, I'll listen, but if not, I know you need to get back to work there on the ground. Anything else you want to say?
Well, we're the Bible Belt, and we always say pray for us, pray for our neighbors, pray for the hearts that are broken, for the families that lost lives. And that's the most important thing we can do. I thank God that I live in Oklahoma and we're able to still get our knees openly and pray for our loved ones and our neighbors beside us.
We're praying with you. We're praying for you. Oklahoma Senator Mark Wayne Mullin, thank you very much, sir.